It's great being here. It's been a long time. Started with Fred and CI in 1990, and in early 1990, even though I idolized Fred like a lot of young staffers did, I really enjoyed meeting R.J. Smith, who was a mentor to me and taught me an awful lot, as he has so many people in this country. And the world is better off because of R.J., just as it is because of Julian Simon and the contribution that he made in his lifetime. And it's very fitting that R.J. received this award tonight. He's eminently deserving of it. And just a couple of personal notes. R.J. and I spent a lot of time together in the early 90s, mid-90s, and as many people know, Fred first told me about R.J. before I even met him, that he had one of the highest bird counts in North America. I'm not a birder, but for those of you who are, that's kind of a lifeless type thing that people keep track of over time if you're a serious birder. He started an Audubon Society chapter in Monmouth, New Jersey back in the 60s. R.J. was a 1960s kind of radical intellectual, but he's classical liberal and environmentalist. And he's done more probably than anyone to reconcile free market principles, classical liberal philosophy with true environmental protection. And he's been doing it longer than anyone else. Taught me a lot, taught a lot of people in this room an awful lot. And he's always been a good friend to me. And I'll tell you something else. RJ, as much as he understands Austrian economics, which he taught me a lot about, encouraged me to read more and more, he really does care about the environment. I've gone on road trips with him where we got to stop every 2 or 3 miles because he sees a particular habitat and he knows there's a particular bird that might be in that habitat and he wants to call for it. And we went on a road trip for several days in Texas, and I borrowed my father's truck. We both flew in from D.C. and drove across Texas for 800 miles and actually wore out the brakes of my father's truck because RJ wanted to stop and call for birds all the time. He's a great guy. He's taught me a lot. He's taught a lot of people. I think he is probably the only gripe that I have with RJ, and I know him well, so take this in stride, is RJ hasn't written enough. I mean, what he's written has been brilliant, but if RJ were to publish half of what he knows, he really does have an encyclopedic knowledge of economics, the environmental movement, the history of the environmental movement, and the issues involved. That the world's definitely a better place with him, and it would be that much better if we could get him to commit more of it to paper. He's that good. He's that much of an asset to this country, to CI, and to this movement, and I'm honored to present him with this award tonight. Thank you.
I'm sort of overwhelmed. I wasn't expecting all of that. It's a marvelous honor to receive the Julian Simon Memorial Award. Julian was one of the seminal thinkers of the 20th century and one of the first to challenge the radical Greens' attack on freedom and progress. He demolished the limits to growth and the belief that human progress was bound in a Malthusian straitjacket and limited by the known or presumably known physical supplies of natural resources. He argued that the ultimate resource was the limitless nature of man's mind. His intelligence, innovation, discovery, and invention. Constantly discovering and creating new resources where none had existed before. For instance, the looming scarcity of copper vanished with its replacement by abundant beach sand by silica. In the past decade, the doomsayers returned again, gleefully predicting the end of growth and the need to reduce population and living standards because of their long-hoped-for exhaustion of fossil fuels and the arrival of peak oil and peak gas. But then, to their dismay, only to witness the ultimate resource again, man's intransigent mind, turn the Earth's abundance of shale deposits into a potential cornucopia of gas and oil, requiring nothing more than a drill and water pressure, hydraulic fracking, to once again shatter the limits to growth. Now, I've been a conservationist and birdwatcher for decades, as well as an advocate of free markets and property rights. In the late 60s, early 70s, I was president of a nature club and an Audubon chapter at a time when the conventional wisdom, almost all of the environmental economists, argued that capitalism and the profit system were the cause of environmental degradation, and the only solution was socialism and communism. I was asked to write a book on how to protect the environment without government regulation and ownership. And I spelled out what I called free market environmentalism, arguing that the institutions of a free society, property rights, markets, and prices, could preserve the environment better than the state. During the Reagan administration, I began a study at the President's Council on Environmental Quality, documenting the history of private conservation, showing that all the things we believe the government must do, own and protect national forests, wildlife refuges, parks, trails, landmarks, even endangered species, have been and can be better protected privately. Because private ownership necessarily produces careful stewardship, while government collectivism breeds 9-to-5 bureaucratic mismanagement. National forests regularly vanish in catastrophic wildfires or in insect plagues, but private forest owners can't afford such mismanagement. Nevertheless, we appear to be on the road to serfdom, paved with green bricks rather than red bricks. And this is because government at all levels now owns over 40% of the entire land area of America. And that total continues to grow. And you cannot maintain a free society if the government owns all the land and all the resources. We are returning to the age of the king's forests, the king's lands, and the king's wildlife, and we may have to become Robin Hoods in order to survive. And for those of you who will carry the torch of liberty on the next lap, our great unfinished task must be to halt and reverse this tide and begin a massive privatization of America's lands and resources. We must do that if we are to have a free and prosperous society and a sound and healthy environment, and if America is to remain a shining city upon a hill. But in conclusion, even CEI has limits to growth, especially of acceptance speeches. Thank you.